Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Organic Matters, the podcast brought to you, of course, by the Irish Organic Association. And it's my pleasure this week to introduce our guest, John Geraghty. And John is involved in WIT, and some of you will know, some of you will not know, that this autumn there's going to be the launch of an organic farming masters. It's organic farming and biological agriculture. Is that right, John? But luckily you're the expert here, so give us the lay of the land. What's it going to be?
Yeah, we have a master's program in organic and biological agriculture, and that's open at the moment for applications. So we already launched the program earlier this spring in February. So we went ahead with two of the courses within the program. One was soil health and water management, and the other one was livestock management. So we will continue with the program from September next with a full intake, and people can do the master's program or they can do the postgraduate diploma program.
And if I'm right, this is the first master's of its kind in Ireland. I know some Irish students have been travelling to Scotland for a similar type of master's, but it's the first one here. So what was the reason behind starting this master's in WIT?
Well, I suppose we've had an undergraduate degree, a bachelor of science in land management since 2007, and we also had a bachelor of science in agricultural science since 2011, 2012. And we had already been reviewing and changing aspects of the curriculum in both of these courses. And because of the demands of policy, because of the demands of different challenges that farmers are facing now with relation to climate change, with relation to water quality, with relation to biodiversity, we had significant changes made in both those programs. But one of the things that we were finding was that there was a demand even from our own graduates, but even further studies available. And just 2 years ago, the National Organic Training SkillNet, they issued a tender for the provision of a postgraduate course in this area, and we put in a submission that we would be interested in developing, and we'd already begun the process of developing a master's program in organic, but also biological agriculture. And sometimes the title, Hannah, it might confuse people because you've got organic and people are very clear about a perception on organic, but biological people aren't very clear about that. But biological agriculture is where we focus on biological processes. So it might not necessarily be organic. It could also be, for example, conventional, but with an emphasis on biological processes in the soil, in the environment, in crops, in animals, all right? But it is a far more sensitive and I would think a more forward-thinking element to agricultural production. And if we're going to, in the Irish context, if we're going to increase, the uptake of organic agriculture, I mean, farmers are, by necessity, they're going to actually have to transfer from the conventional system. So I think this is going to be helpful, both in terms of equipping young farmers along that process, but also actually there's a big aspect with relation to technical support and even policy, the development of supportive policy for this process as well.
I think as well, it touches upon something because every farm walk I go to now, whether it's organic or non-organic, it's talking about the soil quality. There's this big focus that wasn't there before on what's under the grass as opposed to what's going on top of the grass. And I hear a lot of talk even from quite conventional dairy farmers about the importance of earthworms and phosphorus breakdown and things like that. But I guess, is it coming at a good time too? Because we have our own sort of target to increase organic agriculture up to 2030. I think it's 7 or 8%, the figure always eludes me. And on top of that as well, there seems to be hunger for it now from the Department of Agriculture. There's 256 million euro being put behind organics in the next CAP scheme that's coming out next year. So there does seem to be this drive towards it. And something you touched upon in a previous conversation we had, that there does seem to be a lack of education or a lack of knowledge around organics in the country. And even if you look at the number of advisors that are out there, there might be, I think, over 1,000 agricultural advisors in the country, and yet just a handful of them are dedicated to organics. And out of that handful, I don't even know how many would have a level 9 degree like this. So is it trying to tie into all those pieces, all those cogs that are kind of going on, like you said, at a policy level, but also at a farm level?
It is really. I mean, if I go back, I'm going back decades now to my own formal and third level education, but we didn't get exposed to, I think, a lot of the science and the knowledge that is required for soil management and sustainable soil management. Soil was often looked as an inanimate object or a medium in which you produce plants. I suppose particularly in the last decade, there has been a reawakening about the importance of soil biology, and that this is the basis to productive and sustainable systems. But as well as that, even in terms of conventional agriculture, in policy terms, we have various challenges as well. A lot of pesticides that we would have been commonly been used, the licenses are being revoked for those. Okay, you know, we've got restrictions on, for example, the quantity of fertilizer that we can use, and that is independent of what's happening internationally now, where the price of fossil fuel inputs, including fertilizers and agri inputs, a lot of farmers now are having a rethink, and some of it is they desire themselves to equip themselves with more knowledge about the production systems that they have. But the other aspect is they're nearly been forced to move in this direction by two things. One is policy development, but also the other thing is the economy and the cost of some of these inputs as well. But I suppose the challenge is that it's very knowledge intensive, you know. I mean, we rarely talked, for example, Hannah, in farmer meetings 10 years ago about the importance of earthworms. And not alone do we talk about it now, but now we're actually gone to the stage where we're identifying the different categories of earthworms at farmer level and what they do and what they contribute.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so it's really interesting. You know, I mean, people engaged in formal education in this area, they're really, they become very animated about this. And this is the type of thirst for knowledge that's out there. And I think we'll actually capture a lot of that with relation to the Masters itself, but also the individual programs that are contained within the Masters program.
I'm looking at the brochure that you have here, and I'm wondering, can you break down year 1 and year 2 for me, just in terms of the modules that are there? You know, what could people expect to be on year 1 and what could people expect to be on year 2?
Okay, so the first thing is we wanted it to be a practical and accessible master's program and postgraduate program for people that were interested. And people lead busy lives now. So it's a part-time program and it's delivered over 2 years. So the way we have it broken down, our academic year is broken into semesters. So the first semester is between September and December. And in that semester, you will deal with 2 subjects. One is soil and water management, soil health and water management. And the second module that we cover is crop management in organic and biological production. So we were very determined that soil health and more efficient use of water would be the foundation that all participants in the program would engage in. So that's why we deal with the soil first and we move on to crops and plants. In the second semester, which takes place between January and May, we actually deal with livestock management in organic and biological agriculture, but we also deal with human health and nutrition. Okay, so we move from the soil to the plant to the animal, to human health and nutrition. And that's in the first year of the program itself. And then what's really important, and I think about producers that I know, in the organic sector, and I remember one of them saying at a meeting about 18 months ago that over the last 2 to 3 decades, farmers have allowed themselves to be removed from a direct link with the consumer, and this becomes really important because if we want people to understand that what we're producing is better quality food, is more healthy food, well, then we've to be able to express that, we've to be able to explain that, but in terms that the consumer is interested in, and make them aware of these things. So 2 aspects that we deal with in the 3rd semester is project management and marketing, but also the importance of agroforestry and landscape diversity, because again, what we're actually looking at is we're producing these foods and food items, but we're doing it in a rural context. And we also need to guard the sustainability, both economically, financially, socially, and from a heritage point of view in these areas. And these are unique selling points in terms of the quality of food that we can produce. So participants will get a very good, I think, practical grounding in production elements, but also in the whole area of being able to communicate with prospective buyers of their produce, and also to be able to market that to a broader audience and explain the benefits of what they are doing.
Yeah, and I think that is quite important because, like you said, the divide between farmer and consumer just seems to be becoming wider and wider. And I remember we did an interview with Manna and Claire O'Connor from Manna Organic Store, and she was saying that, the shop is nearly a vehicle to sell the organic produce and to talk to consumers. And the interesting thing that she was talking about as well is that, her business to business sales, or talking to our marketing specialists, usually one store would have one demographic coming to them. And yet every survey that she did, it was all demographics, all ages. And the people in marketing couldn't get over that, the organic sector or her organic store had such a wide kind of pull across all ages and all demographics. It was really interesting. But, they wouldn't know that except that she was there with her shop. And she was then quite keen on every county in Ireland having at least one dedicated organic shop. But there's a lot of room there for farmers to talk to consumers, but like you said, they need that knowledge.
They do, and one of the things that's inherent, we can talk about, lectures and online sessions with relation to these different programs, but a significant component then is a practical aspect. So for example, we will be using farm visits, field assessments, visits to agri-businesses, and these will be specifically chosen in different regions around the country for farmers and producers, growers that are already doing these things and doing it very successfully. So this is going to open up the minds of participants to opportunities that can be, availed of, and challenges that can be overcome. So we would endeavour to try and keep things as practical as possible. And then I suppose the final semester is devoted to the whole aspect of conducting a research project. And the most important thing, and I often emphasize this to undergraduate students as well, to do something that's relevant to your own farm or your own business, something that is of direct interest to you, because we want the learnings from the program to actually stand the participant in good stead in the years following graduation from the program itself. So I think overall we've got a good balance. The program is actually sponsored by the National Organic Training SkillNet. They will support a selected number of candidates that are self-employed or from farming backgrounds. And already in the programs that we ran earlier this year, some employers in the agri-food sector, they've actually sponsored some of their employees to participate in the program as well, as an opportunity for their employees to upskill in these areas and to improve the delivery of services in the agri-food sector to producers on the ground. So that's a positive development as well.
And the modules as well, say like the marketing module or other modules, they can be broken down into individual certificates for people as well.
Yeah, no, it took a lot of work in terms of the development and registration and validation of the program, which was an arduous task, but as well as the overall program in the master's or postgraduate diploma. So the master's is where you include this final year research thesis, and the postgraduate diploma is where you do the 6 mandatory modules. But separate from that, those 6 modules, they can be taken as individual programs. So if you don't want to do the master's, or you don't necessarily want to do the postgraduate diploma, you can do one or other of the individual programs and get a level 9 certificate in that program if it is of specific interest or relevance to your own farmer production system at home. And that's, again, you know, part of the flexibility. So you can do the program at your own pace, you know, and as, you know, people lead busy lives, but as and when time allows, you can actually undertake one of the programs over a 12-week period, and you know, you can gather your credits for that, and then at a later stage, the following year or the year after, you can proceed with another one, and over time build up the credits to actually be awarded a postgraduate diploma. But each of the modules are individually certified at that level.
So if people are interested, can they visit WIT now and register their interest, or where should they go?
Yeah, and actually since the 1st of May, WIT has become a technological university. So it's the Southeast Technological University. So the actual contact point now is setu, setu.ie. And just some codes, because it's Waterford, it's WIT. Waterford is the base where we deliver these programs. So it's WIT 613 for the masters. So 613, 614, 615, 616. These are the numbers that you will need to put into a Google search, and that will bring you to a description, an online description of the program, and information on how to apply and what the program is catering for, what is involved, what are the expectations, how much time do you have to put into it, and basic questions that a prospective candidate might want to find answers to.
A basic question before we go might be how much it costs.
Yeah, so a very good question. So independent of any sponsorship, so the cost of individual modules is 990 euros, okay? And that's for one module. The overall master's program over the 2 years costs 7,932 euros. And then depending on the number of modules that you take, it will be multiples of the 990. But what we're finding actually, both in terms of sponsorship from NUTS, which offers up to 30% funding of the costs and the fees associated with the program, but also from the agri-food sector, there's quite a degree of interest among employers to actually support their employees, and that includes the public service as well, in the Department of Agriculture, for example, in Teagasc, in terms of supporting their employees participate in one or other of these certificate programs, or even the overall master's or postgraduate diploma. So there are opportunities to gain funding support out there as well.
Yeah. So it's for anyone listening, it's well worth checking out the website. John, thank you very, very much for that. For anyone listening, you've been listening to the Organic Matters podcast brought to you by the Irish Organic Association. And if you want more information on organics, check out www.irishodganicassociation.ie. But until next time, thank you very much and take care.